Welcome to a special feature question and answer session on the MultiSport Canada website and Facebook page. My name is Steve Fleck, the official announcer for the MultiSport Canada Triathlon Series and many other endurance sports races and events all across North America. Very pleased to be joined by the president of MultiSport Canada, Jason Vurma. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jason, it's been a highly unusual year this year, most extraordinary in the endurance sports race and events business. Tell us a little bit about how 2020 has been for you in MultiSport Canada.
Well, Steve, 2020 has truly been a story of some good news, but also, as everyone knows, plenty of bad news. It's been a really difficult year for everyone. We at MultiSport Canada have truly missed putting on our events. That's been really hard. We've missed seeing our customers. We missed our summer staff. We missed seeing you. It's been a hard year financially, to be truthful. We've had to lay off most of our year-round staff, which has meant losing a lot of good people. As big as we might seem on a race weekend, we're actually a really small team of a handful of people, truly a small business. And when you're a small business that has only 4 to 5 months to support itself, missing a race season makes for a very, very challenging year. Now, having said that, it wasn't all doom and gloom. We're grateful for a number of things this year. Firstly, the support that our industry has received from the government, and most importantly, the support that we've received from so many of our customers. I think the highlight for us was that over 500 people took us up on our monthly challenges this past summer. And from everything we're hearing, there's a really strong appetite for a return to events. And that brings us to where we are right now, which is looking forward to 2021.
And speaking of where we are right now, Jason, what are your thoughts on the current situation?
Yeah, you know, Steve, with the recent spike in cases, it's really hard to say with any certainty. We all want to get back to putting on the events we love, the events our participants love, keeping them safe, giving them fun and fair events. That's a pretty tall order when the ground keeps shifting under your feet, but I know that's what the government's had to deal with and so many other businesses have had to deal with. And any and all the plans that we're making are for what we know right now.
So based on that, what you know right now, what does 2021 look like?
Well, what it could look like, Steve, is a really, really different racing environment, both for participants as well as for organizers. For the participants, it's going to mean expanded number of race days or expanded race days, but only certain distances offered. And those distances can only really be offered at certain events.
So when you say expanded race days or, possibly expanded timelines, what exactly is that going to look like for the participant showing up for a race in 2021?
Yeah, great question. Again, that's the crux of it. So Steve, we have crunched the numbers on this. We've looked at it in great detail. The best way we can see to keep people safe is, number one, giving them more space, and number two, giving them more time. So planning based on what we know right now, that means that each racing day could have 2 to 3 cohorts, independent cohorts of 100 people spread out over the day, morning, late morning, and even early afternoon. And to fit in everyone that wants to race, some of our events we would have to spread out over 3 to 4 to perhaps even 5 days.
So this would be potentially 1,000 people for a nice round number for a given event, spread out in cohorts of 100 people over the course of 3 or 4 days possibly. And then in terms of space, like I'm guessing you imagine a typical, 1,000-person transition zone, which is not unusual in the MultiSport Canada race, but there only being 100 people like in that particular transition zone. So there's lots of space for everyone.
Yeah, the events that we really think we can do have plenty of space, and that's going to be a really big change. But in a lot of ways, I was thinking about this. I mean, it's going to be a return to a little bit more of a grassroots feel for racing. Races used to be smaller, and that's a little bit more of an intimate environment. We think that can be a good thing. I mean, think about when we got started racing, what the races were like.
Absolutely. Back in the 1980s, even sometimes in the early 1990s, a big, triathlon race in Ontario was maybe 200, maybe 300 people. But now, your biggest events push, 1,000 people a day. So indeed, getting back to, smaller races, might not be such a bad idea. You mentioned different formats, Jason. What about those formats? What might, that impact in terms of what you're offering for people for swim, bike, run, even if that next year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So right now, if we're running events over 3 to 4 to perhaps 5 days, the distances that we would be offering would be sprint tries, sprint dues, and of course, give it a tries. The resources required to host an Olympic try over multiple days or a long course over multiple days would just be simply too great. For any events that we do run, and we've got a lot of experience at this, we're going to use seated time trial starts, so fastest to slowest. We've done this at our Bracebridge Triathlon for many years, previous to that our Welland Triathlon. And for those of you that have been around the series for a long time, you might think back all the way to the Orangeville Triathlon of 2002 to, I believe, 2005. We really know how to run time trial events, and we know how to do them in a safe way to keep them fun, keep them fair, keep that same experience that MultiSport Canada has always had.
I'm guessing there's geographical limitations, Jason, in terms of like the specific locations for some of your events. Which in the series do you think you'll be able to host a race at next year?
Yeah, no, fair question. So we need venues that have elbow room, we'll call it that. And so right now, Welland, Bracebridge, and Toronto Island are the ones that seem to have the possibilities to be able to host these expanded timelines, multiple day events. We've got quieter roads, we've got large event sites with lots of space. But unfortunately, if we think about event sites that are really, really tight and intimate, sites like Kingston right in the downtown core or Lakeside, those are two that we don't really think can host these types of events in summer 2021. But where there's a bit of hope as well is for events like Gravenhurst and events like Wasaga. But in order for those events to happen, we would really need some expanded gathering limits for those events to be feasible. Think about how many people we need to get on the steamship.
Yeah, there's some challenges with certain races geographically and physically in terms of what you had said. I hear 100% what you're saying. MultiSport Canada has always been known for the personal touch, the handshake, at the finish line, the enthusiasm of the volunteers, the special little touches that the staff take. Both, before, during, and even after sort of race day to make participants feel welcome and have a great experience. Speak a little bit about, what might happen along those lines for next year.
Yeah, the personal touch is not going away. If anything, think about this, your favorite race director and just 100 or 99 other athletes there. Think about the attention that we can give to each and every individual participant. Our pre-race briefings, they're still going to have very much the same informative and personal feel. And you're going to be greeted at the finish line. The greeting may look a little bit different, of course, in 2021 than in past years. But that warmth and that enthusiasm, I would say, is going to be, everyone's still going to feel that.
So based on what you're saying, there's going to be, if everything sort of goes to plan and what you're looking at now, 3 events, for next year. But we know that, everything with regards to the pandemic and COVID-19 is a very fluid situation. You might be able to add, more if things change.
Yeah. I mean, it's a distinct possibility, Steve, that we may only end up with 3. It all comes down to gathering limits. But the one thing that I need everyone to sort of start to wrap their heads around, again, this is one of the things we're grateful for. We had so many people who deferred their entry or donated their entry. And those folks are the ones that we're going to be opening up registration to first in the 3 events that we plan on launching. And we will launch those at a time when we feel it's responsible to do so. But what I need everyone to start to think about is that's going to mean in those events that maybe only 400 to 500 new spots will be available at each of these events. So that's a big change.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about it that way. And this is important for, listeners out there to think about this, is those open spots maybe in reduced and limited numbers. What does that mean for people who want to get into the series?
Yeah, so I mean, on a very high level, upwards of 7,000 people we would usually have room for on a normal year. This year, it might be potentially down to just 1,500 new spots. So hopefully most people would understand that with a significant change like that, that's a significant change in our cost structure. And our number one goal is to put on events this summer in a responsible way, both for the participants and for ourselves. So that way we're able to bring back the full series for 2022.
You mentioned cost right there, and the costs I know from my involvement in this business are not insignificant. Can you speak without giving it all away, what the extra burden is for you in terms of costs going forward?
Yeah, and you just hit the nail on the head, Steve. I mean, those that have been and seen the inside of events know that they come with some pretty significant costs. And in this case, it's simply a matter of numbers: 7,000 entries down to potentially 1,500. I mean, that's where the increased costs come from, is less people, and that's sort of said in a backwards way. But I think people can connect the dots on that. The numbers don't lie. The math tells us that we're going to have to see some increases in race fees this year, if we want to be able to keep the series around and running and return in 2022.
There was indeed some very good news this week, Jason. Health Canada confirmed the first of a number of vaccines for approval, and indeed today they arrived. The first wave of those shipments arrived via air freight in various locations around the country. So good news, bit of light at the end of the tunnel after 8-9+ months of not so great news. The rollout of these vaccines, Jason, how is that potentially going to impact what happens next year with MultiSport Canada in the series?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, Steve. I mean, I was looking at some of the projections from Health Canada and one of the graphics that they had released to the public, and it showed when the earliest vaccinations would happen and the numbers that they would project for December, January to March, and then into the summer and then into the fall. And right now, they're not projecting that the majority of the population would be getting vaccinated. And this is the key one for us, which in terms of increasing gathering limits, that might take until the early fall of 2021. So with that in mind, everything we're doing is based on what we know and the realities of today.
We've been talking mostly about 2021 and how we're going to get through 2021. How might that impact things when we get to 2022, with the hope that we might be getting sort of back to normal in 2022?
Yeah, our number one goal, Steve, is to get to 2022. And given about how unsure we are about what will happen in 2021, it's really impossible to comment at this point in time as to what 2022 would look like. We're just hoping to be able to put on enough events this summer to make it there. And as dire as that sounds, it's the reality for the vast majority of events and event management companies, partners in our industry as well. Think about folks like Sports Stats who haven't had an event in 9 months.
I know race directors, and I'm lucky to work with great ones like yourself and many of the other top people in the business around North America, Jason. And I know you're all planners, you're doers, you're organizers, you're logistics people. You're planning for every possibility to put a race and event on for your participants next year. Just final thoughts on what's been going on that level, behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve, we know everyone wants to get back to racing. There's no question about that. We all want to return to normal. What we're asking for is, I think so many businesses and government is we're asking for patience and we're asking for flexibility, because we are truly trying to think about every possible option and bring forward the best options. And what we hope is that our customers have come to trust MultiSport over the past nearly 20 years that we've been in this business. Trust that we're going to keep you informed as time goes on about any potential changes, and trust that we're working as hard as we possibly can to get everybody back to racing. And when we do so, we're making sure that the events are safe, they're fun, and that they're fair.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been a question and answer session with the president of MultiSport Canada, Jason Vurma. Jason, thank you very much for going over all of this. I know many racers, participants in your series and other endurance sports races and events all across Canada and North America are really anxious to get back to start lines and finish lines next year.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's been a pleasure.